Hi, welcome to the latest episode of Electronic Quarterback. We're here today with Bruce Croxon, who is actually an investor in our company Blue Rush and somebody I've known for a little while. So thanks a lot for joining us today, Bruce.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
We're going to be mostly exploring the concept of technology and how technology's influenced leadership and leadership styles over the last 10, 20, 30 years. Some of us have that much experience, unfortunately, that we can talk about. So maybe just tell us a little bit about Round 13 and then we'll kind of flow into things from there.
Yeah, sure. Round 13 is a growth stage venture company. We need a different word for venture because the industry's changed a lot over the last 30 years. But what we do is we invest checks into Canadian-only technology companies that are ready to scale. So they're past the proof of concept, they have customers, and they're looking for on average $5 to $10 million to take it to the next level. And we work closely with them and try and get them to a place where other companies might be interested in them, or heaven forbid, you might even have an IPO out of it. So that's what we spend all of our time doing.
Excellent. And you've been investing in tech companies even going back before the Round 13 days, I think. We were talking earlier, 50 plus maybe companies that you've invested in over the years.
Yeah.
Mostly tech companies.
I would say mostly because I spent most of my time in growing a company called Lavalife, which was, we argued whether it was a marketing or a tech company, but it was based on a technology. So at the end of the day, it was put us pretty squarely in the world of tech, and I've continued that theme. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay, so in those days, you're running Lavalife. What kind of technologies were you guys employing to run that company at that stage?
Well, we started very early in a technology that has its most common application in voicemail. So it's called interactive voice response. And arguably, we created the first social network in the world by having people sending messages back and forth over telephone lines. And that evolved to people sending messages back and forth over the internet, which was web personals, and that both telepersonals and web personals ended up being combined into what the market got to know as Lavalife.
Yeah.
But I would say the biggest difference in technology then versus now is that in those days the technology was big, it was expensive, and it was complicated. So by its nature, it kept other people from competing with you. So, we had big computers that people didn't quite know what we were up to, that acted as a barrier to entry. So it gave us room to make mistakes and to grow. We could take our time in a sense. And I would say the biggest difference between then and now is that the mystery has come out of tech and the cost has come out of tech. So that, people that do what you do for a living and the other entrepreneurs that we back know that they have to move very quickly all the time. And the technology is not going to protect you from competition, which is good news for people like me that are looking to back companies like yours because you need the capital to grow quick. So that to me strikes me as the biggest difference between then and now, if you will.
Yeah. And what about the leaders themselves? So 50 companies, your own companies that you've run, have you seen a different type of leader emerge over the past decades? Leaders that are maybe more able to embrace or deploy some of these technologies in terms of how they run their businesses?
Yeah. No, I think it's a very good question. Because what comes with technologies that allow everybody to be knowledgeable and in on decisions means that A, there's no secrets, and B, your work's kind of never done because there's always some other bit of information or bit of knowledge that we can bring to bear on the company. So that to me has led to a different kind of leader. It's one that recognizes A, they don't have all the answers. We come across the odd person that thinks they do, or the odd person.
I mean, you're not talking about me.
No, you've been very open about the fact you know very little. So what I like about you, Steve, you know what I mean? Like, we're all on the table.
Anybody got any ideas? Okay, yeah.
You're humble, right? You need to bring a certain humility to the table because today more than ever before, I would suggest, the odds on you having all the answers are very low.
Yeah.
Just because of the plethora of information that's out there, how quickly things move. So we have to be nimble. I think, we're populating our companies with people that are curious, that are continuous learners, that, when they're in, they're all in, because it really is a, continuous barrage of information. I sort of joke that the new work-life balance for tech leaders today is work really hard for 8 years, sell your company, and take a year off, right? Because it's not work for 5 days and take 2 days. It's just, there's too much going on, right, to have that kind of balance. It's definitely yielded a different type of leader.
No, and it's true. I mean, yesterday I didn't work much.
Right.
And it was Sunday.
Right.
And I felt, part of me was thinking maybe you should put a couple hours in.
Right, because your competitor probably and there's information.
There's
exactly.
inputs.
Yeah.
And then there's thoughts that you haven't. But it does lead me to another question, which is, do you find sometimes maybe with your companies that you're invested into and helping that there's a tendency for them to become overly tactical? Have the planning cycles kind of gone away?
Yep.
Are they strategic enough?
If you're not careful, right? Because it's all consuming, right? I mean, and one of the, I'll go back a little bit. One of the biggest downfalls that I've seen of email, for example, and I would extend that into Slack communication, is that everybody feels compelled to have an opinion if something hits your inbox. And the reality is, not everybody has an opinion, but if you feel compelled to give it, it can burn a lot of time, right? So to your point, if there's too much of that, you're always dealing with fires and tactics and things at the margin. So I think it takes a real discipline on the part of leadership to say, hold on, let's take a breath here. We need to take a little bit of time and plan for our next cycle. But that used to be automatic. Now it's, I think, more of a forced discipline, but it's one that I think is really important.
Yeah. I mean, people are saying now, a 3-year business plan, that doesn't exist anymore.
I tend to think in terms of 18 months. And when I started, the common length of a business plan was 5 years. You remember that? Like, what's your 5-year plan?
Yeah.
Well, today you ask that, I have no idea, right? It's like 3 years, now it's 18 months, I would suggest. And beyond that, things are changing just too fast to know.
Yeah. And do you think that's interesting, just what you're saying is, for me, even personally, it feels sometimes like, okay, let's have the strategic conversation, let's talk with the investors, and then you can get pulled into very tactical conversations. By Microsoft Teams is what we use. We used to use Slack,
right?
Or an email or a text. Somebody walking in the door. That's sort of like getting pulled up and down is something that.
So one thing that stayed consistent, it's always true, I think, that the best CEOs pick 3 to 5 things that they need to be focused on, and they're pretty good at making sure they stay focused on that. That hasn't changed, right? But I think what we've been talking about is it's a lot harder to maintain that discipline today when you've got 100 employees all feeling that they've got something to contribute, and because it's accessible by them and to you, you're resulting feeling that you got to wade in, right? Even though it might not make your top 3 to 5. It's pretty interesting though.
That is part of the skill. I mean, all of a sudden you're on Slack and somebody wants to change the coffee supplier. And I love I could give you lots of opinions about coffee, but there's probably other stuff
that you should be working on.
That I need to do.
I've noticed the coffee's pretty good over your place.
It's not bad.
It's very good.
It's not bad. What about sort of more at a macro level? Are you seeing technology as an enabler in terms of inclusivity, diversity, things like that? Is the portfolio of companies looking different in terms of the leadership than it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
I'm not sure. I think it is different than it was 5 or 10 years ago, but I'm not convinced that we put the cause of that at the foot of technology. I think the country's changing at an incredible pace. One of the good things the government has done recently is made it increasingly easy for people that have skill to get into the country quickly, right? Which is timely given what's going on south of the border. I think there's a natural hunger that first generation Canadians bring to the table in general that has been a great boost to investors and the ecosystem. So yeah, I think it's different. I'm not sure it has anything to do with technology, aside from the fact that these tools allow everybody that has an opinion to be heard, right? Which is pretty incredible. I mean, it used to be, well, if you're not in this office, don't be throwing in any opinions or don't be contributing. But that kind of wall building, if you will, I think is a thing of the past. I mean, it's very much more a democracy, and it's been democratized now as a result of tech.
Yeah. What about the access to information in terms of strategic planning? So all of a sudden you can learn a lot about something in a very short period of time.
And things can change quickly.
And
too.
Things are changing very rapidly.
Yeah.
Your competitors
Yeah.
could be pivoting on you, macroeconomic conditions. But is there also so there's obvious benefits to being able to learn a whole bunch and download a white paper from your competitor, do all those things. But are there risks associated with that much information being available to the board and the CEO as input into the strategic planning and the execution of the business?
I think the risk of too much information is if it bumps up against an organization that doesn't know how to process too much information, right? I think the first thing that we need to realize is that, however good our plan looks in September for the next fiscal year, it's a living document, right? And given certain types of information, the plan might change. I think the discipline comes in as to what type of information would compel you to change, right? And being able to separate the minor stuff from the, oh my God, I never thought of that, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great point because there is a lot out there. So companies have to be good at filtering it,
yeah,
and then deciding if it's going to influence their decisions or not.
Downside is, wow, there's another next shiny object, and you're chasing all over the place. And what were my priorities again? And before you know it, you got chaos, right?
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, listen, thanks so much for taking time today with us.
For having me. My pleasure.
We really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everybody will enjoy it.
Great.
And all the best.
Go Blue Rush.
Go Blue Rush. Thank you for watching this episode of Electronic Quarterback. Don't forget to rate, review, and of course, subscribe to our podcast. And we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.